James Caan is one of the UK's most successful and dynamic entrepreneurs. He's now taking this first-hand knowledge on the road to mentor 6 of the UK's most vibrant small to medium-sized enterprises. Will the young companies make the change or stick to their ways? The business class begins here. This week, Brewdog enters the business class. Let's look at the stats. Founded by James Watt and Martin Dickie, the Aberdeenshire-based microbrewery produces craft beers, and they've also opened up a successful chain of bars across the UK.
Hello and welcome to the business class. Joining us in the studio to help advise Brewdog is Mark Angela, CEO at SSP UK and Ireland, and Shah Wasmund, CEO and founder of Smarter. This week our SME is pushing further boundaries. It's our first company that has created market share outside of the UK. Let's find out more.
In the UK, you can buy our beers in most major retailers, and we're also now sending our beers to 27 different countries around the planet. Export markets are key to what we do, and about 60% of our beers actually goes overseas. Last year, we launched Equity for Punks. Equity for Punks was fully authorised by the FSA, and it was a chance for people who enjoy the beers that we make to buy into our company via our website.
The first challenge is, how can we implement the best management structure to facilitate the rapid expansion of our company?
The way that we're advising them to address the challenge is, number one, recruit some very senior people. And I think one of the things that when you're a young up-and-coming business is when you attract that kind of talent is to use stock options, and I think Brewdog is a great currency to attract talent. So number one, probably implement a stock option program. But I think in some of these areas, they almost need to hire, MDs of their own divisions.
You have people being responsible for their own profit centres, because one of my questions when looking at the numbers was trying to work out where the profit came from. Was it actually from the ales or was it from the retail, and what was the discrepancy between the two? I wanted to make sure that the retail plans weren't actually draining the profits from the core business. And I think you're right, James, that what you want to do is put managing directors in place in each of those centres to run it as a profit centre.
But I think one of the challenges that faces is, if you've never done that before, one of the key things that I learn when I meet entrepreneurs is to hire, very senior people is one thing, but how do I manage somebody that in a role I've never done before? So I think what this business needs is really to have a very strong non-executive board. So you've got the non-execs coaching and mentoring, the founders on how to manage, incentivise and motivate very senior people that you've possibly never managed before.
The second challenge for us is opening our bar units overseas. We need help in deciding who to partner with and how to set up the deals.
I think they need to exploit the potential in the UK first, because the first thing when you go overseas, anybody wants to see is what's your core market, what's your strength in your core market. What that will also do is make sure that they've got their pub retailing model correct.
I mean, if you took this to America, the idea of equity for punks, what's a punk? I mean, they won't get that. They won't understand that analogy in the same way that we would here. That its strengths from a brand perspective in the UK could also be its weakness in another market.
So, Martin and James, you've been listening to us in the studio. What was your takeaway message from there? Starting with you, James.
I think there was a lot of really valid points, especially about how we develop the management team, and especially some of the points that Mark made. We've recently hired an operations director to look after the retail side of our business. Also, although I agreed with that sentiment, I didn't agree with the sentiment that it would be a good idea to take on a lot of non-execs. I mean, this is our vision, this is our passion. I don't think by taking in non-execs, they're not going to share our mission. I think we have a danger if we do that of becoming over corporate, over managed, and I think it would have a detrimental effect on our company culture.
From my perspective, running a small independent company, I have a non-exec board. We do not operate like a corporate company. They don't tell me what to do. In fact, what they're there for is for guidance, in many instances to mentor me on new paths where I haven't tread before. Maybe one of the suggestions to help you get more comfortable is, before you went to setting up a non-exec board, is set up an advisory board. I think you'll find that the reality of it is not what you sitting here today think it will be.
In terms of the challenge there, Martin, when one of the points that you raised was, how do we grow this business from a management point of view? It sounds to me you're almost going to double the size of the business from a headcount perspective. How's that going to work in terms of the two of you and how you're going to manage that?
This key going forward, and what I took from some of your notes earlier, was trying to split it into distinct areas. So you've got your online, your retail, your export, your bars, your general production.
They're almost different businesses, aren't they?
One concern I had when you were speaking about appointing almost an MD in each of these areas. So the worry I have is taking in some of these senior people now who haven't had the same experience in the business from our side.
Bring Shah into this. Shah, I mean, I fully understand what Martin's saying, no question, but that is classic kind of challenges of entrepreneurship.
I think you guys both got similar points. The people, when you're talking about hiring in managing directors, some of them might actually come from the people you already employ. It's absolutely not about relinquishing control. In terms of your other challenge that you set us, what were your thoughts on some of the discussion we were having on that?
Well, I think there's maybe a bit of the background to what we do is important. For instance, Sweden is our biggest market by a long way.
You could continue to have great market share in Sweden by still staying in the retail trade. You don't necessarily need a flagship bar. It's a very enticing thought, but it is very distracting. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions to say, yes, Sweden makes sense, but actually there's another 50 sites in the UK where we could roll out our bars. Then we've got a really fantastic presence in the UK, and that by itself will be a natural springboard overseas. It's quite inspiring to young people looking at starting a business. You know, you set this business up with £20,000. You know, here it is today. You're looking at expanding internationally. You've got retail, you've got online. I think a great business, but I think every great business will have its challenges. And I think some of the things that we picked on today, I genuinely think will be instrumental to making what is a good business a great business. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you to my guests, Mark, Angela and Shah Wassman, and of course to James and Martin. See you all next week when OVO Energy enters the business class.
The business class was really useful when you're running any small, fast-growing business. It's so easy to get caught up in all the ongoing day-to-day things, so it was a great opportunity to get some perspective and also get some kind of really good things to think about from James, Caan and Mark.